Alright guys, this is your boy Like One Half Enduro and welcome to another episode of Drive Time. Again, I'm driving, trying to get content on the channel. I'm driving, so I'm talking a little louder. You're gonna hear back roaring noise. Yes, it's not studio quality. Never did I try to do studio quality because I do this for fun, but I wanna respond to this video right here because this is a pretty matter of fact video that makes sense to what we as Nintendo fans understand a long time ago. But for some reason, the PC Master Race and then the Xbox and PlayStation, this one is more of a gamers to gamers thing than the usual plebeian stuff, always argue about so many times. Oh, Nintendo's not that powerful, the Switch 2 is powerful, whatever. Again, the Switch 2 is more powerful than the Switch 1. That's good. This is the first time that a console is a derivative of the previous console. Meaning, the last time they did this was Nintendo to Super Nintendo. That's what it was. They had a lot more stuff to Super Nintendo, but still it was derivative of a Nintendo. 64 was different. GameCube was different. The Wii was different. The Wii U, even though it has the same name, was different. It was set up differently. And the Switch to Wii U was set up differently as well. But Super Nintendo to that, this came in Switch 1 to Switch Z. Switch 1 to Switch 2. So, people always talk about the power. Nintendo just need to get power to make the games run good and do good. We saw at the end of Switch 1 where Nintendo themselves, and I blame Nintendo on this one. Oh, like us criticizing Nintendo? I know, right? When Nintendo was really, they could have made those games run good on the Switch 1. I'm talking about Zelda, the Zelda game with Zelda as the main protagonist. I forgot the name of it right now. Mario Luigi Brothership, games like that. They put it out because they try to get games to fill up gaps and do stuff. I think they could have still. No, I know because I did talk to someone. They could have optimized it way more better for the Switch 1. They didn't need a power. People like, oh, it could have been done, but they wanted a time crunch, and they wanted to get out at a certain time to keep the momentum going, so they could get something to hold over until the Switch 2 announcement and all the stuff, the blah 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 blah. Now they got the more power to do it. And my point is this: I'm not saying Nintendo was never a power console. Perish the thought. Super Nintendo was more powerful than Super Nintendo. 64 was more powerful than the Super Nintendo, the Super Nintendo's NES. The GameCube was a very powerful console at this time. It didn't compete with Xbox, but it still did a lot of stuff better than the PlayStation 2. And then the Wii, that's when Nintendo was like, you know what? Power. And you could go back to when Reggie Fils-Aimé was talking about that stuff, and also Iwata was talking about the power, same thing too. We just want a different style of gameplay. We want games, and that's what it is. And that's when that philosophy took over. People call it the blue ocean philosophy and stuff like that. So this is asking Nintendo Switch 2, does it need to be that powerful? And I can answer the question up front before anybody else, because again, I have the Switch 2 and I play the game. I have a PlayStation 5. The answer is no. I'm enjoying the lovely games that I've been playing right now. They've been playing good, no problem. But let's go from this aspect.
Everyone keeps arguing whether the Nintendo Switch 2 is powerful enough. Some are saying that it's underpowered, whilst others are saying that Nintendo should have matched Sony with the PS5.
No.
And somehow every time Nintendo launches a console, we end up having the exact same conversation. But here's the thing, I think that most people are asking the wrong question. Because the Nintendo Switch 2 does not need to be the most powerful handheld. It actually doesn't even need to be close. What it should be doing is something much more important than just power. And if Nintendo get that right, then the power debate suddenly won't matter anymore. So the first mistake that people tend to make here is comparing Nintendo to the likes of Sony and Microsoft. And whilst you can compare the PS5 to the Xbox Series range, adding in the Switch to that race isn't fair because it isn't competing in that same race. Sony sell PlayStations whilst Microsoft sell Xboxes. Nintendo, though, they sell Nintendo, and that might sound like a weird way of putting it, but it's actually the most simple way to look at it. You're getting an experience with Nintendo rather than just a product. Most people buy...
Exactly. We buy, again, what did I've said it for? I like Nintendo games, so I'm buying the games for a reason. Exclusives, all that does matter. And that's why I'm buying the Nintendo console, because I like Nintendo games. Sorry. I'm a 40-year-old. What can I say? If Xbox had exclusives, again, the one time I say I was about to buy an Xbox was the Xbox 360 era, because I saw some great exclusives that they were putting together, and I was saying, I might get some little third-party exclusives, like, I might gotta get me an Xbox 360, but then the Red Ring stopped that and everything. I was like, that stopped that for sure. PlayStation 4 had some stuff, and I was like, it didn't have enough to me, but it had stuff that I was like, okay, I can see it. So upon PlayStation 5, I said, well, it's backwards capabilities, so I'm gonna buy a PlayStation 4 games and some PlayStation 5 games, which sadly, a lot of PlayStation 5 games, there's a video coming up, going to be showing this, or if you already done, I got a video on the channel, just notice, where I literally talk about my PlayStation 5 games that I buy. They're not exclusive to the PlayStation 5 because they were multi-plat, but I prefer the PlayStation version of the games. But again, they're getting the full DLC and everything else after on the Switch. It's like, the Switch now. So there you go. But we buying the Nintendo as a gateway to their exclusives. Sony doesn't have an exclusive. Xbox barely has any exclusive. That's just what it is. Sorry to tell people this, but again, exclusives does matter.
A PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series console are buying it because it's a machine, whereas most people buying a Nintendo console are purchasing it to get into the ecosystem and to unlock the range of the Nintendo games. Exactly. You are effectively buying access to the likes of Mario and Zelda and Pokemon and Animal Crossing, Smash Bros, and all of the other IPs that you can only get over on Nintendo with the Switch 2. If we're being honest, whether you have one already or maybe you're looking to buy one, you're not really looking at getting a Switch 2 because it has the highest teraflop count. Exactly. And I think we all know that, and equally I think Nintendo knows that. And that's why I think they've always been willing to sacrifice a little bit of raw power.
Let me get this up. I talked to him earlier.
A horseable console that you can literally play anywhere you want to, and also because of the impact on battery life. The more power you have, the lower battery you're going to get, so Nintendo likes to factor that in too. And of course, the price and the accessibility of the parts and the fact that these can actually even be made sustainably.
Exactly. And another thing I put on a Nintendo's cap. I wanted to point this out since you just brought it up. Nintendo mainstream. A lot of stuff, mainline. I've said it. I've said it in past videos. You go back to WTF video 2, where I said that Nintendo mainstream a lot of stuff that made gaming very popular. The rumble feature. They didn't invent the rumble in the control. No, they did not. But it was them, because of the rumble pack on the 64, made it mainline. Same thing with the analog stick. They didn't invent it, but they mainline it again with the 64. Memory packs, shoulder buttons. They did not mainstream that. Invent it, but they mainstream that. And basically, the four axis buttons A, B, X, Y became a thing because of the Super Nintendo. The D-pad came more pronounced with the NES. Analog buttons, where everybody talk about, became more because of the GameCube, and motion controls, the same thing with the Wii. Touchpads and everything was a DS, the touch generation as they call it. And Did PC Gaming had PC handhelds? Of course. Never said that Nintendo didn't create it. They didn't invent it. But who made it mainline? Nintendo. It wasn't the most powerful thing out there, but it mainstreaming, and that's what they did. So you got to give Nintendo, give their hats off to that. That's why people are like, oh. Again, look at right now. While most games are, let's be legit, little bit of games are majority, and again, people don't like you with the key cards. I understand that. They're still the only company that give you access to the full game on a cartridge. So, what can I say?
Of a factor. One thing that I think gets overlooked is that more performance isn't just a free upgrade. Every improvement that Nintendo make with a new console, or any company for that matter, comes with a cost. There are always going to be trade-offs when you add power to a machine. A more powerful chip means you get more heat. More heat means you need more cooling, which means you need more fans. Adding all of this means you have a larger and heavier device. You're likely going to experience more battery drain with all of these added features. And of course, because we added all of that in general, you're probably going to have a higher ticket price. And I think people forget that that's the chain that people end up falling down when they start improving by just plummeting loads of stuff into these devices. So Nintendo keep it simpler. People talk about wanting a portable PS5, but if you've ever used some of the more high-end handheld PCs, you'll probably know that they are incredibly impressive. But because of that, they are also bigger, they're heavier, they cost more, they're harder to find because of the supply chain demands, and almost all of them struggle to last long away from a charger. Some of them even have like a 2 to 3 hour battery life. It's crazy. So Nintendo understands something that a lot of tech companies just tend to forget. Consumers aren't buying purely specification, they're also buying the user experience. So if a less powerful console gives a better overall experience, then ultimately that's the better product, isn't it? And since most people compare just with other consoles in the PC space, here's a comparison that not a lot of people sort of mention as much. I want you to think about smartphones. Most flagship phones today are ridiculously powerful, and far more powerful than what the average person actually needs or uses day to day. Most people are just messaging friends, they're scrolling TikTok, they're ordering dinner on an app, maybe you watch some YouTube or take some photos and videos every now and then, but a lot of people aren't exactly rendering movies or building AI models on their phone, which they are literally quite capable of doing now. Yet every single year, these phone companies keep adding more and more and more power and driving that price higher and higher and higher, and pressuring people with marketing to keep buying and jumping on that ladder and climbing up. Meanwhile, there's a massive range of kind of midpoint priced phones that are almost as powerful as some of the higher priced phones like the iPhone 17 Pro, the latest Galaxy range, and so on. And the Switch 2 feels similar to that. At some point, the question stops being, can we add more power? And the question becomes, will players even realistically notice? Because at the end of the day, I can compare specs with the Switch 2, other consoles, PCs, other handhelds all day long. But there is a huge difference between what benchmarks better and what actually just feels better. And this is where Nintendo's priorities, especially with the Switch 2, are actually a lot smarter than I think people give them credit for. I see a lot of complaints about the power being lower and people expecting more for the money. And that usually is because of those comparisons. I think we just like dogging on stuff that hasn't met the standards of the other products in that space, or like the PS5. But if you think back to the original Switch, the biggest problem with those wasn't really power, it was more so the consistency. There was frame rate drops, there was long loading screens all the time, there was really poor third-party ports, and there were games that were being made that were clearly pushing the hardware too far because they just hadn't released the next iteration yet. But in the same breath, there were some incredible experiences like Breath of the Wild that run pleasantly. I played that on a Switch Lite and it still ran fine.
eBay online shopping and selling.
There were some incredible series of Pokemon games that came out over there. We had the craze of Animal Crossing in lockdown that made everybody go nuts for Switch. And Ring Fit Adventure was sold out literally everywhere. It was most people's exercise during the lockdown. And it goes without saying, Mario Party, Mario Kart, all of these family games brought people together for years. My point is that most players don't need every single game in your library running at 4K at 120 FPS. You just don't need that all the time. What we do notice though, with every game, is does it stutter? Are things taking forever to load? Are screens low quality? Are my controllers breaking all the time? Is there good single player and multiplayer options?
Which we did because of the drift, which again, legitimate call against Nintendo, the stick drift. Even though all the other consoles have that, But Nintendo was the one who got hit the most with that. But again, not saying he's not wrong. I'm saying that he's correct. That we then start thinking about other stuff to criticize Nintendo. And again, stick drift is legitimate. I'm gonna never argue against that.
There are enough variety of games? Do the games look and feel nice? So really, a stable performance and a stable 60 FPS and really high graphics that don't always have to be 4K is more than enough. I would rather have lower power with the Switch 2, but a better experience that's more consistent than a high power machine that dies all the time, that overheats like crazy, that drives the price up to probably double what it is now, that makes it far more scarce to get a hold of, and ultimately doesn't add too much more to the experience than we're already getting with the Switch 2 as it is and has been for the year it's now been out. So this is something I think people massively underestimate. Nintendo owns its entire ecosystem. They own the hardware, the operating system, the games, the developers for those games, and the studios too. Whereas when Sony or Xbox release their console, they're still reliant on third-party people to make the games for those consoles. And Nintendo's biggest games are made specifically for Nintendo hardware. So whilst yes, the power is lower in comparison, it still runs those games exceptionally well. I've been playing so much for the Switch 2 and I've had no issues running any game with any performance bugs. It's been a very smooth, very fun and very crisp experience, especially handheld. This screen is the best it's ever been. And the fact that Nintendo are doing this and being smart with the limits that they push and the limits that they don't is a massive advantage in the end for us as gamers. And ultimately, on the back end, without us even realizing it, it's saving us money that we could have had to have spent and a bunch of features we probably wouldn't need that are going to detriment us anyway, i.e. battery life, overheating, and so on. So good optimization can often achieve more than people realize. We already saw developers pull off crazy things with the original Switch, like Breath of the Wild, as I said. Some of those games looked impossible considering the hardware that was used to make them. So now we're a year in and we've got a really nice list of games that have come out for the Switch 2. Imagine how much further that's going to stretch in more years to come. But now, here is possibly my hottest take of the video. The most important part about the Switch 2 is not the graphics and the updates and the power, it is the longevity. People aren't upgrading consoles every few years like smartphones. Many families often buy one system and then they keep that for sometimes 8 to 10 years. So what matters is whether that hardware remains reliable and supported for all of those years with constant releases and constant updates. And the good thing about that is Switch is in fact doing that. So whilst it had a little bit of a rocky launch with kind of public reception, I can see why they did this. It didn't have to be the fastest thing on launch day. Just look at the slew of games we've had for the year since, and nothing can beat the fun of Nintendo Switch. What I think it comes down to for them is that if the Nintendo Switch 2 can run all of Nintendo's first-party games for all of its lifespan, then Nintendo have done their job. The average buyer isn't going to be going out and buying a different handheld because it got 15 FPS faster than the Switch 2, or just because someone like me in a video like this told you that it benchmarked very slightly better. Again, it's about the experience. But we're still yet to talk on the biggest factor of all, which is the price. Let's imagine Nintendo make a console as powerful and as demanding as everybody is asking for online. Then what do we think is going to happen? Well, the price is probably going to go up, and quite considerably as well. The availability of the Switch is going to go down because they would probably be more scarce to make, and scalpers would probably run rampant with it, so you'd never get your hands on one anyway. Families and people on a budget are going to be priced out. The audience is going to ultimately shrink. So Nintendo really have always known something very important. A slightly weaker console that millions more people can get their hands on and play and enjoy, and more importantly, actually afford, than a machine that, yes, might have more power, but now is probably priced out and less accessible for the average buyer. And ultimately, a console lives and dies by how many players play it and for how long they're playing.
And that's true. And I've talked about that, the same thing as well too. Now again, let's piggyback a little bit on one thing he said before we finish up with his video. Keep on going. Even the Wii U, the big, terrible, bad Wii U, Nintendo was still making, until the Wii U's death, they were still, well, not death, the end of the cycle, there were still games from Nintendo coming out, working and playing very well. Very, very well. I.e., Breath of the Wild. I played Breath of the Wild, not on the Switch. Oh, no. I played Breath of the Wild on the Wii U and beat it on the Wii U. That's where I played that game, on the Wii U. So when people talk about, the upgrade with the Breath of the Wild now and everything with the, 4K and 60 frames per second and up, I will play it on a 1080p screen with Wii U, which did what I did, and it was cool to me. I had no problems with the Wii U's version of the Switch, of Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild. I had no problems with it. While other people on the Switch side was getting slowdowns in the Kokiri Forest and everything like that, I wasn't getting that. I was like whooping butts, doing all kind of stuff, having fun with it. So even to their lowest console they ever had, which is the Wii U, not technically the Wii U, but the Wii U itself, they provide at least a lot of games. I mean, look at PlayStation and Xbox. Look at their exclusive between their now consoles. Even the Virtual Boy had more exclusives than these consoles today. That's sad. And that's the worst selling console Nintendo ever had, which is, handheld console, everything, with the Virtual Boy. That was the worst one. And we can't even say it as bad because Nintendo found a way to make Virtual Boy again more something again akin to a trope, a hook, a gimmick. So you can sell again now because they're selling the Virtual Boy again. So it had a longer lifespan than anybody could ever think about it. That's the difference. You know why the Vita got messed up? Why Vita didn't outsell the DS? Because Sony did not support it all the way through. Sony basically handheld it back. That's the best I can say. I'm gonna say something untoward and I hold my mouth back on that one. Sony said something. Sony did not went all out and supported the Vita as much as they can. That's the difference between Sony and Nintendo. When things are not going right, hey, what would I help Xbox, the Xbox One, after that and the Xbox? If the Xbox carried exclusive gaming library from the Xbox 360, but the holy savior Phil Spencer, that jackwagon, basically, hey, Xbox is everywhere. We can play anything you want, and then that fell apart because nobody. If I don't gotta buy the exclusive thing for that, then I don't. Why would I buy it?
Hence PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, they're all household names, because for years they've made different iterations of consoles, all of which have been available and priced to a point that isn't too high so people can still get them. That is what attracts developers, that is what makes and sells games, that is what keeps these big IPs like Pokemon, like Animal Crossing going. And sometimes you just can't be cozying up in a corner on your own and playing Stardew Valley. And I'll never get tired of failing on Tetris 99 and seeing my partner absolutely smoke me. So instead of asking, is the Switch 2 powerful enough? Maybe we should be asking, powerful enough for what? Because if you're expecting a handheld PS5, then yeah, you might be disappointed. But if Nintendo delivers on better performance...
Funny enough, there is a handheld PS5, but you need a PlayStation 5 to make it work. Yes, you can do you can also do the PlayStation online as well too. But again, that's $300 something you gotta pay for a year. And it depends on what games you want to get for that. Like, nah, I'm good.
Better battery life, better game.
And I know this because I have the PlayStation Portal.
Compatibility, better third-party support, better ergonomics and design, and better longevity, whilst also keeping the price pretty sensible, which, by the way, they've done all of with the Switch 2, then they've probably built exactly the console that they needed to build. Not the most powerful console, the most Nintendo console. The funny thing is, if you really think about it, they've spent decades proving that the most powerful console isn't necessarily the best or the most fun. The Nintendo Wii wasn't the most powerful, but everybody had that console. It's one of the best-selling consoles of all time. Yeah. Even the DS's and the original Switch weren't the most powerful handhelds or consoles, but everybody knows them. Everybody has nostalgia, memories. All of those became massive successes on a household basis. Most people would know what they are, even if they didn't have one at any point. And we are now 1 year into the Nintendo Switch 2's lifespan. And now, with some incredible games available, a ton of free games for new players, and a deeper and more premium feeling portable home console level experience that means that you can play anywhere, is having less power really that big of a problem? I don't think so. So no, as the title says, Nintendo Switch 2 2 does not need to be the most powerful console out there. It needs to be just powerful enough to deliver that beautiful Nintendo experience that we've all grown to love over the years. Exactly. And that is definitely something we can trust them to do, because Nintendo for decades now, generation after generation, has delivered that experience and made more and more memories for more and more people. So if you love tech and you found this at all helpful or fun, then here is your last chance to subscribe before you go, and another video that you might enjoy.
I respect to you on that, sir. That is awesome, and that's what it is. That's what competition does, and that's what people. That's what. Even though I'm a Nintendo fan, I do not want Xbox to bow out. But again, you make dumb decisions. What you want me to expect? I was a Sega kid back in the day, and I can acknowledge Sega did some dumb stuff. Because you know what? I didn't buy a Saturn. My friend did, and I saw the Saturn. And I was like, don't get me wrong. Street Fighter Alpha series on that was awesome, and I liked it. I didn't buy a 32X because I was like, I don't know. I didn't buy a Saturn. I did buy a Dreamcast. Why? Because it looked like they got themselves together, and I'm like, oh yes, a Dreamcast. And I'll tell you this, I enjoy my Dreamcast. I really do. Not BSing nobody. I enjoy my Dreamcast. But, And then again, I bought a PlayStation 2 because PlayStation 1, I played a lot of PlayStation 1 with my friends because at their house. I bought a PlayStation 2 when I was in college. And I'll say this, I know I'll sound hypocritical for this. And I'm not saying what I did was right, okay? Not saying I was right. I was wrong for it, and I'm being hypocritical on it. But I was a college student, and I did do this, and I said, yo, no. And because again, I was that. With the Dreamcast and with the PlayStation 2, there were ways that you could buy those games cheaper, and they were basically pirated games. I'm not saying, I'm not proud of that fact, but I did. Dreamcast, I had a couple games that was that. PlayStation 2, I had a couple games that was that. GameCube, not at all, because GameCube had all the games I wanted. But again, for honesty, I bought a PlayStation, then I gave it up. I gave up the PlayStation 2. And the next place, and who'd have thought? 3, 4, I bought a PlayStation 5. But I've been consistent with Nintendo, 3DS, DS, all the way up. And I myself personally, other than, because I didn't care back then, I care more the whole, I know the bits were better for the graphics, and they were more powerful, but that's more I was worried about. I was like, oh wow, 64 graphics, that's good. 3D models and everything. Again, another thing Nintendo mainstream with the 64, Z targeting and action and stuff. All that. Like they did so much mainstream in 64, which is why that's also a very good console that I like. But again, do Nintendo needs to be powerful? No. Xbox and PlayStation want to do that? Let them do that. I'll have more respect for those things if they had more exclusives. If I want power, I'll go PC. The problem with PC is because you cannot optimize for every single PC situation out there, you don't get a great game. You have to overpower the game to get it to work most of the time. And that kind of sucks. And with prices as they are right now, as again, I saw a video where a guy was building a PC from Best Buy, and he bought a 4 terabyte NVMe and also a 5090, not 5090, sorry, 5080. Oh, so sorry, 5080 graphics card. Both of them, just those two combined, was $2,200. Damn, $2,200. That's crazy. That is basically almost 80% of the computer I have right now that I bought. Literally, I think I spend maybe $24 to $25. I'll round up to $2,500 I spend on my PC that I have my rig at a house. But, jeez Louise, that is ridiculous. That said, thank you, One Tech Deals, for your video, and I agree with a lot of your what you were saying in the video. I do agree, and again, every place have their space in there. If all, like I said before, if only Sony and Microsoft had more exclusive, then it would be all great. That's all it is. Anyway, with that said, I'll catch y'all next time. Remember, there's no perfect games out there. What's perfect is not perfect to me. What's perfect to me is not perfect to you. Simply enjoy games on all consoles, including PC. Peace out.